Welcome to the Dental Handoff. I am Dr. Kelly Tanner, and today I have with me a new friend, Katherine Sellery. Katherine, thank you so much for being on with us today.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted.
You speak about things that are near and dear to my heart about that human, connecting with human and other humans that are such an essential part of our lives, obviously, but we don't realize sometimes like how much communication and the way that we think that we're communicating and connecting with others truly impacts others.
Yeah, it's everything actually. So, if we don't start really feeling like I get you or you get me, then we're not building on anything authentic. So it's so important. The connection part really is step one for all really good, solid foundations to be built on.
Yeah. So I always start with, I know you're not in dentistry, you're not a dental professional, but you are speaking at the Mommies in Business and Dentistry and some other things dental related because we need you, obviously. But what is your story? What is your background? How'd you get started?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, no, I'm excited to be speaking. It's on September 27th in Chicago, just to give that a plug if you're not coming yet. I'm sure there's space and it would be wonderful for everybody to gather there and reconnect and form connections. My story, I moved to Hong Kong in 1989. And so I've spent the last 35 years in Hong Kong. So this has been I spent more time overseas than I have in the United States, my place of birth. And I went to Hong Kong as a commodities trader. I traded non-ferrous metals for an American metals trading company. And then I started my own company trading non-ferrous metals and built a factory in northern China for an American client and shipped his stuff for, oh my God, I don't even know, like 25 years, maybe something like that. Establishing my own company, going off and working in a lot of other international markets. My main market was China. I speak Chinese. I studied Chinese in university.
Wow.
And then did a lot of work in, Taiwan and Russia and around the sort of world. And my kids were born and raised in Hong Kong, which has been really fun to see what it's like to have these third culture kids, of which there are so many, who grow up in another country, but they're not from that country, but they're a part of that country, but yet they're not really, like born and bred Americans either. So these third culture kids, which I have a couple of, who then come to America and start to establish their American roots, but yet they don't feel like everybody else, which is, again, back to this idea of, do we see people from the inside out?
Yeah.
Because they look like everybody else. It's just that from the inside out, they're really very different. And yet, actually, I think that's the case for all of us.
Yes.
Which is why the whole thing of, truly deeply seeing you and being able to connect with what I'm sensing might be happening inside of you is the answer to all our problems.
Okay.
Feel seen, heard, and understood from their perspective, feel like they can now see, hear, and understand me from my perspective. And that's the whole game. The whole game is for us to be able to feel like, God, you really got me. And to be able to provide that to someone, or for someone to do that for me, it's like, it makes such a big difference.
How did you get from that to what you're doing now?
Yeah, like how'd that happen? Well, my background had been in, like poli-sci history. I went to law school. I became sort of that disillusioned person around, it's not really about the truth. So, I was like I wanted to be about the truth, but, it's not always about the truth. It's about, the form and the structure and, all kinds of different things. And I just wanted things to be about the truth. And then I fell in love with China. I was on semester at sea when I was in college. If you're familiar with that program, you travel around the world on a ship with a bunch of other people, and they have the professors on board, and you study as you go, and you're gone for like 3.5 months. And it changed my life and my direction. And so then I fell in love with, China, of all things, and started studying Chinese, of all things. And this was way back, like in the early 80s, when that was pretty unusual. There were 3 people in my Chinese class. And when I moved to China in 1983 to teach at a university, there were 11 foreigners in Zhejiang province, 50 in the entire country. It was right after the Chinese Cultural Revolution from 1976, 66 to 76. So they were just opening the door. It was like wild stuff was going on. It was a whole transformation. I could go on and on just about all the changes that have happened in that country, and how sometimes when the younger generation in Hong Kong didn't live through it, and they're pushing and pushing without recognizing and acknowledging all the changes that have already happened. I'm just always like, oh my gosh, you guys, if you'd been there when I was there and you see this country now, you would just go, whoa, so much has happened.
Yeah, they had to process a lot.
Yeah.
As individually and as a country.
Yeah, it's true. It's just been extraordinary. But anyway, when I started having my kids, I started to just be fascinated with family dynamics and transgenerational trauma and how that shows up in my parenting. And that was the beginning of sort of my whole moving into nonviolent communication. I was lucky enough to train with Marshall Rosenberg. Rosenberg was the founder of the Center for Nonviolent Communication, CNBC. And I guess I spent the last 20 something years just really becoming all in on conflict resolution and leadership. And what does it mean to be a leader in your family, a leader in your business, a leader in your life? Like, how do I show up? How do I show up and how do I see other people? And just, I can't get enough of it. It's just such a big part of our civilization and our lives, how we communicate with one another.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here thinking too, I have 3 children, and, being from a homegrown Southern culture and upbringing, it wasn't always nonviolent. It was, verbal threats. I mean, I still threaten my kids. If you don't do this, I'm going to take away your phone. Okay. So, I mean, that's not really violent.
That's so
just
good.
Consequences, right? But,
card carrying. We used to laugh about this in my trainings, Hi, my name is Katherine. I still yell at my kids. It's one of those. It's like, I just did a whole thing. I have a private Facebook group with a few thousand people, a few thousand parents in there. And I work together with a pediatrician, and we just laughed about, we can teach this stuff all day long. It doesn't mean that we don't yell at our kids. That people, all of us, we talk about stress, right? And we were talking before, the show started, just about attrition and losing people. These people that we've worked so hard and invested so much in, and yet we're all getting stressed out. Yeah. And until we learn to really manage and balance our lives, it's inevitable that we yell at our kids, we quit our jobs. We get to the point where we're fed up, and our only solution is, fight, flight, submit. We just end up flying out of there, right? It's that whole thing. The nervous system gets activated and we just end up leaving.
Yeah, because we can't process that. So where do you start? So I know you're speaking for mommies in business and dentistry. Yeah. Where do we start? Because I was telling Katherine about what we're experiencing as a dental workforce and professionals. And I know that it's not unique to dentistry, but how do we start to change the culture to where it's nurturing, to it's something that people embrace, and that they stay, and that they feel like a comfortable challenge for themselves as a human, and feel like they are contributing to the overall whole of things?
So I think that, prevention is always going to be the best option. And so creating a culture within your practice where you're really also stepping back, not only in checking in with yourself, like, am I doing okay? Am I about to blow up? Do I need to go do some breathing and meditation? And creating a culture where you're preventing, because you're identifying, this all of us are in a pressure cooker. Yeah. And as you were saying, as a dental technician, that's just physically exhausting.
Yes.
Yeah. And you are interacting so close up. That's also another level of stress. and being so in other people's space, and how are they doing that day? And you've got to be picking up on what's going on for them as well. So it's a lot of just taking care of you. And as like practices, having that culture within the practice of just maybe even having like some little breathing breaks or little meditation breaks, whatever that is for, your practice, or how you would like to help people with that, or if they have their own thing. But just that caring about how you doing, and, do you need a little support today? And just that is gold.
Yeah.
Absolutely gold. Plus the superhighway of communication. I remember we've had a bunch of different types of property investments. And one of them was an apartment building for a while. And the manager of the building, I can remember, like, I'm living overseas. Like, this guy carries the load. He's my main man. And he quit. And I remember saying, oh my God, Rob, please, don't quit. What's wrong? What can I help you with? And it was like, I just can't be a resident manager here. 35 units. He lived on the property. He's like, I never feel like I'm off work. People have no boundaries. They knock on my door day and night, this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, you don't have to live there. Oh my God, I'll, find an apartment you love. We'll cover the cost. Like, we didn't get to do the brainstorming in advance of his quitting. And he didn't know how to say or even imagine that I would be open and creative with him, because he didn't know how much I valued him.
Wow. That's powerful.
So there were so many things that I learned from that, and we worked it out. He moved out, he found an apartment, we were happy, like, to, cover the cost. It was a quid pro quo. Like, we're getting it here. I don't care where you go. You're the thing that matters to me. Like, I need to keep you happy. And I learned that he didn't know how to tell me he was unhappy. And I was so far away, I couldn't pick up on day-to-day kind of like cues and clues or signaling behaviors that were present. But that would be the other thing I would say, is that people don't always communicate what's happening internally. Yeah. They don't always tell you what their feelings and needs are. They don't even necessarily have the training to know how to do that. They just know they're not okay. Yeah. And like all organisms, we're going to try to make ourselves okay. And sometimes we think the thing that's going to make me okay is to get rid of this. But True. You and I both know they're going to go to the next practice and the very same thing is going to happen. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because what you don't resolve, you just keep attracting.
Exactly. I take me everywhere. So no matter where I go, I'm just going to create the same thing, right? Oh, there we are again. Eventually you're like, I wonder if it has something to do with me. So,
how do people learn? Do you have any advice on how people learn to communicate when they're unhappy?
Oh, yeah. Well,
this is kind of what you do.
Yeah. And honestly, I'll say, women in particular are not great at this, because they're so focused on how other people are doing. Right. I mean, we're sort of like born and bred to be worried about everybody else. Yeah. It's part of the psychology. And there's almost something about, like, if I'm thinking about me, then what's, that's selfish. I mean, there could be a whole dialogue around it, rather than this is in service to everyone. Mama thinking about mama is in service to everyone, that kind of a thing. Totally. Like if mom's not happy, nobody's happy. We all know that to be true, right?
Yes. Yeah. but taking it in that direction, if you're not happy and no one else is happy, how much more ripple effect are you truly having, because you're not really saying what's in your heart?
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the number one sort of like piece is, if we feel as though other people are responsible for our feelings, and we're in that victim blame consciousness, like, when you did that, you made me feel like, oh my God. So that would be the first thing, is to recognize within myself, do I still blame other people for how I feel? Like, how much responsibility am I really taking for my feeling world? Do I recognize the difference between someone being the catalyst and the cause? And that would be like the cornerstone, is that, yeah, of course, we go through life and events catalyze us, People catalyze us. Other, there's like millions of things every day that catalyze my feeling realm.
Yeah.
And if I believe that you made me feel this way, then I'm going to want to punish you. I'm going to want to take it out on you. I'm going to want to just like be focused on you.
Yeah.
And of course, nobody makes me feel. So as a result of truly like deeply knowing that, and this is not a small thing to deeply like on a cellular basis get, because we grow up in a culture where, buy this car and you'll feel sexy and cool. It's all about like the external world creates my experience.
Right.
And so when we have an external locus of causality, we tend to focus on what other things or people do to us, because we actually teach from a very young age or experienced from a young age, like, look at the gray hairs you gave me. And, look at this and what you've done to me. We've grown up in a culture where, frankly, most all of us experienced our parents telling us that we were responsible for how they feel. We could make mommy happy. We could make mommy sad. We could make dad happy. We could make dad sad. It was like, oh my God, I made you feel that way. And then I made to feel badly for the way I made you feel, as if that was ever even possible. It wasn't.
Because the person has to choose how they're feeling. It's the person's responsibility to have the choice to feel.
Well, here's the deal. The feelings are going to arise. And we actually, I don't think, have any power over the fact that feelings arise. But as long as I'm not identified as I am my feelings, I have feelings. Feelings have arisen within me. This event really catalyzed me. Everything in me wants to blame you for that. However, I know and that if there were 10 people in a room experiencing the same catalyst, there would be 10 different feelings that arose. So the feelings that arise actually are so individual. They're based on so many factors. And the catalyst is never the cause of it. It catalyzed it. However, it's not the cause of the feeling that arose in me or you or the other people in the room. So you get it, right? So if we're having conversations and it starts with, well, you made me feel so irritated when you blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, whoa. You may want to address the thing that I did or didn't do. And feelings obviously arose in you, but don't blame them on me. And if you want this conversation to become productive, then we have to shift the context of what and how my feelings arise. And I can never possibly blame someone else for them and think that we're not just going to get into a defensive conversation.
So, and I know people a lot of times call this triggering, like a person triggers an emotion. So walk me through this real time in a dental office.
Yeah.
Okay. Or any setting that you're folks who
we can go to a dental office. Let's go there.
That you're speaking with. So we're in such small quarters with with the hygienist, with the dental assistants, and
with the clients.
With the clients, right. And then we know through research that the smaller the group, the more complex the organization is, because you live together and it's
totally,
you basically live in each other's space too.
Yeah.
That close. So if I'm picking up an energy that doctor is irritated about something that I'm doing, of course, I'm going to say, hey, it seems like that you might be feeling a certain kind of way. When this happens, can you talk me through that? And then they may say, in a perfect world, oh, that's because I really prefer it to be done this way. And then it goes away, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of times people let this resentment, because they're picking up on that body language or the whatever, this looking at them, giving them the chicken eye. And how do we keep that from happening and stop it early on before it builds that resentment?
Perfect. So one thing to remember is when someone else is doing or that expression and they're showing you, right? That's the signaling behavior, the cues, the clues, picking up on other people's way of expressing, not a lot of times non-verbally, right? We already know that, nonverbal communication is the primary way that we communicate.
Yes.
And so, one of the hallmarks of nonviolent communication is you never listen to the words people say, because very rarely do the words people say actually reflect any type of reality. So classic example, you could say to someone, is everything okay? And there's fine. And you're like,
That's truthful.
there you go. That's not authentic. But if you're listening to the words people say, you'll be like, oh, okay, I asked him, he said he was fine. Well, that's not true. So respond to the truth as opposed to what people say. So if that person is like imploding and there's something going on, you can see it, you could say that they're definitely in the problem zone. Would you agree?
Yes.
So leave them there and don't go there and join them.
Okay.
So keep it very clear, check in with yourself. Okay. Do I feel okay about me? Do I feel okay about the way I've shown up? Yeah, actually, I'm okay with me. I can see they're not. And there's something going on there, but let me just double check. No, I feel good. I mean, it may not have been their preference, or there may be something that we need to explore here. However, I'm okay. They're definitely not okay.
Yeah.
So as long as I don't go and become part of the problem, then I'm able to turn to that person who's huffing and puffing and say, hey, I can see you're really upset right now. And I'm not really sure how to support this turning into a better situation. I'd really like to. I'd like to know what's going on. And I would really appreciate it if you wouldn't mind. Could we figure out how to make this a better environment for both of us? So you're kind of being the leader in the communication. You're opening the doorway for the person who's bothered to share a little bit more. And when people express themselves through the huffing and the puffing, it's usually that they're not very good at assertive communication. And they don't know how to say the thing that would have prevented all of this. So they might have even let it build up. Like there might have been something about a preference of, I like it this way. I like it when you put these things this way as opposed to this way, something really simple. And there's just not very good assertiveness skills on that person's part. And so instead of sharing, they just get madder and madder. As long as we don't take it personally, then we're able to just keep checking in and going, I showed up okay. Obviously there's something about this that's upsetting to this person. So I'm wondering what's wrong with them. How could I help them feel better? And now you're thinking about, now, how can I help that person feel better? As opposed to, oh, how dare you talk to me that way? Or all of a sudden making it about you.
Yeah.
Not easy, you know, but on the other hand, it does give you some freedom if you don't make it about you and their nasty expression and how that made you feel, because we're back to the land of, you don't have to feel that way. You can instead be curious. You can have the feeling of wonder and I wonder what's going on with that guy, as opposed to, you make me feel blah, blah, blah. It's just not productive. We just end up going into this, it's called the cycle of anger and defiance, where, you get angry and they get more and more defiant, or you get defiant and they get more angry. I mean, and we're now in this dance, this classic dance that we've all been in.
Yeah. Yeah.
It leads us nowhere. Right?
Yeah. It doesn't end well.
It never ends well. Exactly. Probably with somebody huffing and puffing and leaving and quitting and all the rest of it. So we would love to see the leadership taking these proactive steps, but not everybody knows how to do it. So it can actually be done in terms of the land of hierarchy by anyone who has the skills in the room. So that's the joy, is that someone who's so-called, maybe not the most powerful person in the room, they could actually become the most powerful person.
I could see that. Yeah. Because it's
because they have the skills.
Right. They have the skill set where other people may not be ready to realize at that point, or don't see it, or their head is in
they have a different context. Their context is, other people make me feel. Their context is that, they're just in some kind of knee-jerk reactivity, which is why when I spoke earlier about having like a breathing and meditation, or just maybe having the context of a wellness practice. Because as basically dentists and the entire practice, everyone in that room is in the business of wellness.
Yes. Yep.
So if you have the mindset of, our practice is a wellness practice, and we actually practice what we are here to provide. Yeah. We take the space, because, I'm a meditator, I teach meditation, and we know from all the research that the more relaxed you are and the less stressed you are, the better you show up the better you do your job,
Yep.
the more space you have for people who are falling apart.
Yes.
And you really can like kind of just be like, oh man, this guy is really suffering. He's snapping at me, snapping at other people. This person must be really having a hard time right now. Well, I wonder what I could do to support them.
Yeah.
And when you change it to not taking it personally, because it really has nothing to do with you, it's their ecosystem that's so wound up that in this person's ecosystem, they're not being responsible for their own feelings and needs.
Yeah.
They
And
have
then
to learn how to speak about them.
And at some point, Katherine, too, if this dance keeps along, that's just saying that in theory, in applied theory, you're doing everything exactly how it should, but there's boundaries that have to be set if it keeps recurring and
I agree. Yeah.
like
you can only go so far. You can't get in someone else's skin and help them start to become more responsible. If they live in the blame culture and they just, you can even have conversations about, gosh, I really would love for us to have a more constructive way to discuss the things that need to change in the practice. Would you be willing for us to talk about a process that we can all agree on? That would be a great way for us to, just kind of work these things out without them becoming so nasty.
I love that. And it starts with agreements, I think, of everyone saying, yeah, we're willing to do this and hold that space for that as a group.
Yeah. And so, the top-down problem-solving model is not a very successful one.
Right.
So collaborative problem solving, where everybody feels like they're a part of the solution. Everybody is like, yeah, we could do that. We could recreate this, practice so that it really worked and flowed for everyone here. Let's have, everybody can decide. We can have a meeting once a month, or, maybe for a little while, we might need to do it more often as we're recreating our culture in the practice. And we could sort of like get together, establish some of the things that we can see is really not working, kind of brainstorm what some new ideas are about how we could even talk about them, like in the moment, prevent them, things like that. And then why don't we check in and see how that new approach is going? Yeah. And not a huge timeline. Like, let's check in, in 2 or 3 days, like not in weeks from now where you haven't had a chance to get back together and decide, yeah, that worked really well, that not so much. So let's not do that anymore. Let's try this, and just kind of massage it.
Yeah, I love that. It's because that will, to one of our original points, it will help resolve and cure and prevent burnout, turnover, attrition.
Yes.
In any profession.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I talk a lot about retaliation, rebellion, and resistance. It's the 3 R's. And in almost every context, whether it's in this context, which is really like leadership context within corporations and practices, or if it's in a family system. So the 3 R's will arise, and it'll be fun for you to kind of like think about, like, is this retaliation, rebellion, resistance? I wonder what's going on here. And you can take it into your practices. You can take it into your homes, and you'll see it's everywhere. That when someone doesn't feel like they've been part of creating a solution, and that someone else is telling them how they have to change their behavior, that, generally speaking, no one likes that.
No, they want autonomy. We want autonomy.
Yeah, we do. It's a basic need.
It is.
And we can't ignore that basic need for autonomy, for people to feel self-directed, for them to feel like they're choosing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is true for adults, but it's also true for children. And so when you use a power over approach to discipline with a child, and it becomes that if you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. Depending on the child, they may be like, fine, go ahead. I don't care.
Yeah.
Right. You may get total pushback because their needs for autonomy, choice, and their needs to feel as though they've been seen, heard, and understood from their perspective. None of that happened. Because we do have an unconscious bias that children are just supposed to do as they're told and be obedient and compliant.
Yes.
Yeah, which is dangerous for a lot of reasons. So without going too far into the family matrix, we can just say, yeah, needs for autonomy are huge. And the more that we can be in a space with other people, recognizing that they have the desire to be considerate and to solve problems, and the more that we give them some power and choice around direction, the more they're going to adopt it because they chose it.
Yeah. This is such a powerful message. And I feel like too, for our listeners, is that these are bite-sized approaches that you could even be the leader of. Anyone can be the leader of in the practice. You take this, you try it on for size at home, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a perfect process. It's an imperfect process, but you learn how to become better throughout that process. And you say, hey, I'm going to try something different. When we do this, be that leader in the practice to say that, no matter, like you said, no matter what hierarchy you feel like you're in, it's that collaborative nature of the we and how we do here. So that's brilliant, Katherine. Any other final words? Our time has just slipped by.
I know. We knew it was going to just go like that.
I just want to keep listening. Any final words for the audience that things that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So I think the main thing, as we're breaking this idea that other people make us feel, is this idea that, no one is responsible other than me for what's going on inside of me. However, when something is going on inside of me, it's my responsibility to be like connected to myself. Like, God, something really is happening. I gotta take a step back and like honor my inner world and be with it, not in the sense that I become merged with it and I become out of control. That's not the idea. The idea is to be the observer. Mm-hmm. So the observer mind is, wow, there's something really happening right now. I'm just gonna be with that part of me and sense into what's happening. Yes. So, we all carry transgenerational trauma. We all carry a lot of baggage. And the more that we can stay connected and be with that inner something, the more that we can turn our attention to it, see, hear, listen, and be with it, the more it can feel seen, heard, and understood from its perspective. So if you begin to sense your inner world in that way, as more of the observer, as opposed to having been somehow like merged with your feeling realm, I think a lot of people start out really merged.
Yeah, they detach from the situation. They're able to detach from it and
exactly. Yeah. Sure. It's like, oh, it's there. I don't want to pretend it's not. I don't want to be inauthentic or somehow process skipping. Some process is necessary.
Yes.
Yeah. So just how do we move into that space of being the observer of our inner world as opposed to being merged with it?
Yeah. Brilliant. Katherine, thank you so much.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Loved our little short time. We could go on for hours.
We really could. I have so many more questions. Maybe we'll do a part 2 if the audience.
Sure.
Drop it down in the link, everyone, if you guys want to hear more from Katherine. She's brilliant. And if you want to get in touch with her, you will see a way to schedule any time with her in the show notes through a Calendly link. And then also her website is there too. It's KatherineSellery.com, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Which is also for parenting and then also for self-improvement.
You can go to BalanceWork-Life or you can go to Conscious Parenting Revolution.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much for your time. I'm grateful.
We're so grateful. I'm grateful too.
For all the followers, you guys, I always ask for a favor. Go to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star rating. Apple's the one that matters. And then go on over to YouTube, subscribe, and share so other people who are interested, who may be interested in this, can also get notifications when we post. So thank you all for each of what you do every day for the public you serve. We will see you next time, my friends. Be well.